What's going on, my dudes? Thank you for the folks that have been waiting for this one. It was a nice, good weekend to kind of catch up, take a breath, and review things on what does this world look like on a post-ETH merge standpoint. And for anybody out there that has been mining for a long time, it doesn't look good for the GPU miners right now. It was interesting to see a couple data points when we got to see how much hash power moved over to these other networks that only support GPUs. And we're going to peel back kind of where some of the hash rate went. What are kind of the next steps? What are we doing from a BBT standpoint on the GPU side? And what are, what do you do in this? I mean, we've had a couple of these instances throughout the years. Since I've been mining for as long as I have been, I would say from a spec mining to late 2010 Bitcoin, more than one machine after 2010 into 2011, and became really focused in 2012 on mining, made the channel in 2013. So I've been through a few of these cycles where you mine and there's really nothing from a profitability, if you're talking USD standpoint, something to pay for the power. And we're going to kind of go through that because you'll see a lot of folks out there talk about, spec mining or, you got to let it settle, all that. And I want to peel that back. I want to peel you back on like how I've had to handle it personally from mining. And then really we're in a different, phase of GPU mining, given now we're 7+ years of having something to mine. And then now we're back to something there's still stuff to mine, but if you're doing it for pure profit, it's going to be a bit. So let's let some folks get in here. I am going to answer some questions out there. So be sure to post some questions out there when we're ready for that. And we're going to kind of just go through the numbers and look at some of the things that I look at and what I've looked at over this weekend, and kind of that decompression of seeing, was there anything that was going to fail with Ethereum's proof of stake? Did anybody 0-day attack it? Is there, what's the activity on the other chains? That kind of stuff. So it's nice to see that we have a pretty large participation here today. And get everybody in here. I want to make sure we have some good perspectives from the audience today too. So let's just peel into it. And what are we looking at? So, right before the merge, we were talking about the different networks. We kind of focused on what was there post-merge to be able to mine. And what I have up behind me and what I'll switch over to, I actually have the screen set up on this live stream to where we can get a little more detail on them, on what hash went over to what network, and what are we going to be looking at over the next couple of weeks, given the profitability that is out there, given what the cost of, paying for power, if we're talking, 12 cents, 10 cents per kilowatt hour, like how long can these things maintain? How long can these networks maintain unprofitability? Because right now, if you just take a basic glance, and I'm going to exclude ETC out of this picture a little bit, as we know that ETC can take a handful of the ASIC miners that were on Ethereum, and their profitability is a little different. But if we look at Flux, we look at Ergo, we look at Ravencoin versus what their hash rates went up, and you can see them right here. And I'll switch over. Let's take a quick glance at what effectively has happened in this market. We can see, again, Ethereum Classic not really focused on because it's a lot of ASIC movement over there, but it did go from about 25 terahash to a little over 200. It peaked at almost 400. Everybody, in the day right after the merge, it shot way up, and now it's kind of settled back down around 200 terahash. We see, Ravencoin there, 182% increase. We're seeing that at 20 terahash. That was about 3 terahash ahead of it, right? So it's orders of magnitude increase of hash rate. So if you 10x something, so it didn't go up 10x, but it pretty came close to 10x. A Ravencoin's basis, so let's say you are earning 100 coins per day on a machine, you would start earning 10. So that's an order of magnitude, right? That's a very significant decrease. And the same thing for ETC. Folks that were earning 1 ETC in 1 week, like 1 full ETC with maybe a single rig, 3 card, you're down to 0.1 ETC. So it's a noticeable decrease in yield. And that's what happens when you see that large of an increase on these networks. You see Flux down there towards the bottom, 173% increase. And you see Ergo with one of the largest impacts. And there's a reason for that, partly because of the impacts on Flux and Ravencoin have on these networks when you're talking about the algorithm and the impact on a lot of the builds that are out there. The Ravencoin and Flux hit the machine a little harder. So if you have an NVIDIA box and you were set up for ETH and you're like, well, I'll start trying to mine Flux. Well, you're going to see that your power, your heat, because it's a lot more core heavy, you're probably using a little more than you were using power-wise on running Flux or even included Ravencoin. And a lot of people went to Ergo because it just didn't have the overhead by comparison. So you see a much larger increase, 500% increase there. But obviously, price, as it started to front run ahead of the merge, we saw Ravencoin shooting all the way up to 7 cents from 2 cents. Now it's down to 4 cents. So it's lost 50% of its value since post-merge. It does the pricing really doesn't warrant the ability for even anybody to participate at this point, right? It has enough, quote unquote, the security budget based on the emission of a coin. So I'm going to take it one step back for the folks that don't really track this. I know we have a lot of folks that kind of watch that don't really mine, but each cryptocurrency network has an emission. That emission is whatever the block reward is. And that is effectively, you could consider that its security budget at the end of the day. Because if you peel everything back, all the opinions, everything else, at the end of the day, you're left with what the numbers are. In Ravencoin's case, as an example, I use that as a basic. Every 1 minute, it puts out 2,500 coins of emission. You can times those 2,500 coins by its price. And that's its total value per 1 minute, right? And then you can times that by 60, and you start to come to the numbers that ends up being, right? If you look at that, it was 25 times lower than Ethereum's emission rate, where Ethereum didn't put out a lot of coins, but the coins were worth a lot more money, right? So when you look at the budget, the security budget, when I say the security budget, I'm talking purely with how much it makes sense versus a cost to operate, right? So if you own your GPU and you're purely like, how much does this cost for me to run? Then it's just a balance of, am I making enough yield or should I be buying it? So am I paying the power company or should I just buy the coin? And I think a lot of people are looking at those figures right now and are like, yeah, it doesn't make sense for me to run my machines. And we're kind of getting to that point of what we're going to see, I think, over the next week is we're going to see a lot of that hash rate come back off. So you had this natural transition because people just went in and flipped a switch or pointed to a new network and they're mining to see if you would have price kind of start to catch the fact that these networks are ultra secure now, like 2, 3, 5, 10 times the hash rate that they had before. You know, if the hash rate on Ravencoin, as an example, went to 30 terahash, it would be 10 times its original 3 terahash, right? So you have a much more robustly secured network, but the yield is a lot smaller, 10 times less yield, and the price didn't go up 10x. So it didn't offset. So what we're going to see is a retraction. I think that this is when people start powering down their machines, and that's what we're already starting to see. And this is what happened. Well, I had a question on Twitter over the weekend, and somebody asked, how long was the last, GPU bear market that we've seen, the previous one? And I look at this as the second time this has happened. So the first time essentially is when we lost script from a GPU market. And any of you old school guys that remember back in December of 2013 when Dogecoin first launched, that was the kind of push that brought a lot of folks in to GPU mining. I would argue that the amount of participation that there was there in 2012 to 2013 on Bitcoin as it was switching over to the ASICs, and we had Litecoin come in. Dogecoin, just as much as Litecoin, had a pretty large effect on the industry back in 2013, December of 2013. And essentially it took us from December of 2013 to roughly May, so 5 months, and we started seeing ASICs come out for script. And then by the time August of 2014, pretty much everything was not profitable. We were almost in the same kind of bucket as we are now, to where the script ASICs that came out were like a 10x improvement on the GPUs. So it just, the difficulty was so high, and it was like, this doesn't make any sense at my current kilowatt rating. So a lot of GPUs got powered down. The R9 290s that were out there, the 7970s, all those kind of GPUs got turned off. NVIDIA really wasn't in the picture at this point. But you know, it was a sad day for GPU mining during that. And the questions were a lot of the same questions that are happening right now. Like, I don't see how we'll ever have something that was as profitable as Ethereum. I don't see how at that time it was as Litecoin and Doge. And the one thing I would say is participation, the ability to participate, the ability to take some code, a miner, and be able to be part of this ecosystem is a very powerful thing. And what that does is you look at from an incentive standpoint, from people that are building on these networks, they have the incentive to know that they have the participation there, as long as people start to see a warrant or a need for that particular network. And that's what I'm going to pivot us into here in a second here, is looking at, we know what the profitability numbers are right now. We know that a lot of people cannot participate right now in the GPU mining scene with the various networks that we were just discussed. Ergo, Flux, there's Vertcoin, Ubiq, all of these different coins that are trying to have some sort of engagement, of participation warranted by the code and the features that they're supplying in, you know, their particular use cases. And if you look at like the marketing side, and then you look at the reality of execution, we can all, this is one of the cool things about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, is we can actually see if they're being used or not. Like you hear the noise, you hear the buzz, and then we can go to the chain and see, is there transactions? Are people using some of the features that are being touted as the next best thing? And that's one thing I'm going to switch this over to real quick, is show you guys kind of what I'm tracking to see, how do we start to see adoption? And adoption is very important. If anybody that started mining Ethereum in the early days, and I'm talking September of 2015 is when it came out. I started making videos around October of 2015 into November, because we started seeing some GPU miners that could use it. But the realities were, there wasn't a lot of use on Ethereum at that point in time. There just wasn't a lot of activity. There wasn't a lot of development of features yet. It was essentially like no other, like just any other coin. Vertcoin, everybody had the same kind of pitch at that time. We had Digibyte, we had Siacoin, we had Decred, we had all these coins in those early 2015, 2016 days that were all competing for the attention of development and, you know, what people would use the coin for. And I keep talking about this is because this is what's made Ethereum had its price discovery. It isn't because people were mining it as much. It wasn't because it was the better platform on any one particular feature. It was because of the community that got behind it and started building features that people would start to use. And you started having a lot more activity on it. And that activity begets the security budget increasing, because price starts to increase because there's demand for it. And I think that's what the next phase of a post-ETH looks like, is does Ethereum continue on the proof of stake side and keep that engagement? Looking at their transaction data right now on proof of stake, I would say it's definitely decreased. There's not, the GUI is as cheap as it's been since Ether Delta, pre-DeFi land, to the point that it's not even all of the touting of it becoming deflationary when it got the emission down. It's actually been inflationary because there's not enough activity on it. And I think that's what you end up having. You end up having this loss of purpose for a bit while people are starting to figure it out. There's not a lot of DeFi activity. There's not a ton of NFT activity. We are in a bear market, so there is something to say on that. But what this is everybody has the opportunity to challenge the status quo on what's relevant on these chains. And this is what I'm looking at. So one of the fundamental things you can look at without having to do a lot of research on stuff is you can look at the blockchain explorers and see how many transactions, what's going on, and how's the chain looking. So if we switch over real quick to the screen and we take a look at these various blockchains explorers. So I'm going to bring up here, once I get my mouse over here on the screen, I got like this dual screen thing, so I'm trying to work it out here. And the mouse doesn't like to go over to this other screen sometimes for whatever. There we go. I start to lose. There we go. Here we go. So if I go over and I look, let's just take a look at Ethereum Classic real quick. We're looking at the blockchain explorer. So its average block time right now is averaging 12.4 seconds. It's really close to the Ethereum blockchain right now at 2.2 seconds on proof of stake. It's very close. And if I look at all the blocks, I'm going to look at its blocks right now. And what I'm looking for is how full are those blocks? Is there activity? And we can see this block just a few seconds ago, 2 minutes ago, had 22 transactions, 7 transactions, no transactions. That was a no transaction block. Essentially, a block was mined, 2.56 ETC was awarded, and it didn't process anything. Here's one for 137, 0, another 0 block, 42 transactions, 14 transactions. So we had one block there that was full. So, I mean, ETC, not a lot of activity going on. Ravencoin. Let's refresh this. Let's get a current. So transactions, very dormant right now. Not a lot of transactions going on on Ravencoin right now. 1, 10, 3, 11. That's and then these are 1 minute block times. So you'll have 4 ETC blocks to 1 Ravencoin block right now. So not a lot of activity right now. And I mean, again, we're in a bear market, but still, this is where you're going to see, is there a lot of stuff going on? Is there activity? Are people making transactions on here? And you can dive down deeper. You can see, like this is, 2,300 kilobytes, and this one was 7,900. So this one probably had some Ravencoin assets in it or something that was actually transferring some level of detail. You can see the larger kilobyte size had some sort of metadata or something in it. So this block was a lot more full than this block, even though there was less transactions. So there is something to be said on total size, because that means that people are attaching things or creating NFTs on like Ravencoin's blockchain as an example. Ergo, same thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's see what kind of activities are we looking at. 20, 17, a little more activity on Ergo right now. And total transaction count, right? Again, its blockchain went up about 5 times in its total usage. Or it's 5 times on its total hash rate. So a lot more activity out there, a little more payouts from pools. So some of those larger blocks will be just like pool payouts, sending out transactions to folks in a batch order. Flux, let's take a look at Flux. Flux, a lot more activity. Flux is a chain that is a lot more dense and rich when it comes to its feature set, considering you can run, a Docker image on Flux. So it from a transaction state standpoint, a lot more things going on here. So it does have a lot more activity on it. So we're seeing, 217. There was a transaction, only had 1. So it was a solo block, only processed 1 transaction. Minor pool. And some of this could be pool configuration. Like on a solo pool, for whatever reason, it didn't grab anything from the memory pool and it just processed the block and processed the payment. Some of that could be minor pool configuration also. There's probably stuff in the transaction mempool, But for whatever reason, when two miners constructed the block, they didn't include any other transactions for that solo miner. Now, if there was a ton of fees in there, if I was a solo miner on two miners, I'd be like, bros, what's up? Well, you got to stack that block up, my dudes. You can't be sending me solo. Now, here on this one, two miners processed one. There was 111 transactions. So I don't think it's in their full config. It's just for some reason this poor guy that won a block didn't have any other transactions included. Now, if we go to Ethereum, we refresh. Now, this is going to be taking transactions in general. We can see how full are Ethereum blocks. And we just refreshed here 17 seconds ago. So they're not 100% full. They're not like, when things are really active, right? On Ethereum, where we have 100% blocks and we see lots of extra fees because people are competing. There is no competition for fees right now. This is why fees are super cheap. They're not even, we're at 10 GUI. I haven't seen it that low in forever. Priority fees 2 GUI. The base fee is 8 GUI. So this is as low as it's been since even before DeFi. So not a ton of activity. Why there's a ton of transactions, there's just not a lot of competition. These blocks aren't full. So it's showing that it's really reducing. For giggles, I put a Bitcoin there. Now this is a 10-minute block time. So Bitcoin's always been pretty busy. This is a 3-year scope. That's 24-hour. Let's scroll down here. Now let's go to 3-year. Look at the consistency on Bitcoin. 10-minute block time though. So mempool most of the time full, finishing up anywhere from let's see here, the low side, 1,000 transactions in a Bitcoin block to averaging 2,300, 2,500. You're around 2,500. You're filling a block in Bitcoin. But obviously a lot more. And this isn't indicating of like layer 2. So this isn't showing us all the layer 2 transactions if we're talking Lightning. It's not showing the transactions on the ETH side for Matic and the layer 2s there. But it does give us some kind of level of indicator on activity on chain. So I wanted to show a baseline of that to show that, ETC had everything to gain here, but there's just no activity on it. Like there's just not a lot going on here. Like some of these blocks are empty. Like that's an empty block. That's an empty block. 16 transaction, empty block. So, from a block activity standpoint and a usage of the chain, Ergo, Flux, and Ravencoin are actually outperforming from a transaction standpoint, activity, and that there's a big difference here. Like, so it's not like just capability. It's a matter of, are people using the chain or not for anything? And my argument is for GPU mining to come back in any capacity, the features that are on these chains not only need to be understood and what they can provide, but they become a feature that people want and create a demand side on the coins. So nothing on a GPU miner is owed to them. What's owed to them is if they choose to participate with that network, what's the emission, what's the price, and what's the equipment cost and maintenance, right? So that's the agreements that GPU miners work with, right? They look at the network and they go, there's room for me to participate on this, and then here's my basic yield. It's a cash business, right? It's a token business, right? On what's my output and yield, and can I use and deploy that to generate more revenue? This is what a lot of miners did on Ethereum that we always used to complain about, of like, it's not just about how much Ethereum can I get and then turning into that in cash. The way we did a lot of ours is we looked at how much Ethereum we're earning, and is there other things in the ecosystem, ENS addresses, being part of DeFi, being on the liquidity pools, which a couple of those things we got rugged on, right? As we were starting to learn, bridging, Matic, using it for like Z.run, trying to understand the ecosystem. Features on those ecosystems is everything. The emission schedule on a coin is just the ability to create new inflation on that, right? So what my viewpoint right now is going to be is which of these chains are going to provide now the next level of participation. We've seen decentralized finance. We've seen what happens with like algorithmic versions of that, stablecoins versions of that, where those are features that create a demand curve on that. When we're talking Ethereum with DAI, or we're talking Terra, failures on trying to do it from an algorithmic standpoint and trying to create its reserves in Bitcoin, and saw what happened there. Where people played the game theory and Terra lost, and all the people that were invested in Terra lost on that gamble that they had a better solution. Looking forward on Flux and Ergo, what I'm going to see is from an application side, can it support something that's different? Flux, definitely, in our last interview with Flux and Dan and Davey talking about what its features are. It's bringing something different to the space. It's bringing the ability to take a rich application set and deploy it to the node structure. Now they are splitting that infrastructure, that emission, with node providers and miners, right? So they're using the miner security on 50% of that payout, and the other 50% they're paying node providers, which provide the base infrastructure for people to deploy applications to. Not just dApps, but actual rich compartmentalized applications that can run within a Docker container. That's something that's different. And we're seeing that already on when we were just looking at Flux's transaction data, which was about 10x on what Ethereum Classic's transactions are right now. Showing that, what that shows me is Flux has a lot more activity, and it becomes more of, I wouldn't call it a sleeping dragon, but it becomes more of a, as we start to see some inertia with something with Flux, is the demand side going to really come in behind that and support it, because now it's going to have capabilities that people are leveraging daily. That's the stuff that I'm looking at. I'm looking at transaction data, because that's given us, that's the proverbial smoking gun. And yes, it can be gamed. I know that there's always a counterparty out there that's going to come out and say, well, any of these transactions could be gamed. Somebody could just keep transferring stuff. But you start to look at the quality of the transaction. What's happening with that? What smart contract is it calling? Are they from different addresses? You can have an entire, challenging look at that to make sure that it is different folks using it in that. If you start to see some inertia with that, we can do the investigations ourselves. It's a public blockchain. But I think that those kind of rich data sets are where it's going to be at. From like a Ravencoin standpoint, it does have an asset database. It does have the ability to do, NFT structures. It does have a metaverse world right now. There is the same kind of activities when we start talking about Ergo with its ecosystem and its ability to start to pair with some of the other proof of stake coins. When we talk this integration with Cardano, I think the ecosystem, when I look at August of 2014 through essentially October of 2015, where there wasn't a lot to mine that we could participate with, that growth of development came with Ethereum. Now that we're in a post-ETH merge world, Ethereum's going to have its science project to figure out, does proof of stake actually promote a continuation of the organic grassroots ecosystem that helped provide for it, which is the GPU miner. The data that I'm compiling that against is, look what happened to every other, and mind you, these are smaller instances, and ETH is a different animal. That being said, Decred, Zcash, Siacoin, Digibyte, coins that had some level of promise and movement, had a decent grassroots following, had their own ecosystem. Dash is included in this, which used to be Darkcoin. All of these coins, when they leaned in to away from that core GPU miner, I don't want to say they became less relevant. They just had less organic participation. And yes, we're in a bear market, but we're not even a week past the ETH merge right now, and we're at the lowest GWES that we've ever seen. So is this going to be indicative? And I would say in some part of it, yes, there's going to be some organic loss, because you're losing all of that activity of all these different miners that were leveraging the chain. And I don't think people were really tracking how much miners were deploying into this ecosystem. And stakers, it's a little different game, because one thing, the core stake is locked up. The emission rate for that stake is still locked up. Lido is providing an ST-ETH for allowing you some liquidity movement, but not every staking service is doing that. And then the emission that's getting paid out to the block reward folks, we're already seeing not all that's being paid back out to all the different stakers, right? It goes into a pot. I know that I had a small instance. I had put 0.1 ETH in Rocket Pool, and I haven't seen any. I don't know if Rocket Pool's won any proof of stake blocks, but I haven't seen any reward come into that address yet. So that was part of one of the videos I wanted to cover, is like, okay, I have part of a ETH node stake, proof of stake. I want to see how does the fee side of it, because not a lot of people were tracking that all of the activity on the chain, because it's on ETH1, essentially like the smart contract activity, the fees paid are paid out to the ETH1 address, not proof of stake address. Proof of stake is only the emission side right now until they completely merge, if they ever do a full ETH2O merge. So the emission being paid of the fees, the base fee to the node providers, I haven't seen that yet. So you have this amount of ETH that was moving in the ecosystem, part of it being new emission, and then part of it being all those extra fees that were paid out that weren't burned, were in float in people's wallet addresses that they would then use to do things with. And that is kind of that movement active ETH. And then you had stuff that people could go buy on an exchange and then go buy an NFT or whatever, move it to MetaMask. But we're seeing the true activity being reduced, because now you've effectively just starved off the ecosystem from this emission rate. And I think it's going to be very telling for ETH. And I think that's part of the reason why we're starting to see some of that slide. Does ETH become, it's ultrasound money and all that? I don't know. I think it's the world of these other coins have everything to gain from ETH's failure in that. A failure to understand on how the economics of that work, failure to understand what happened with, these other chains that did the same type of thing, where either they leaned fully into ASICs or they since moved into some other, split like Dash did with the whole masternode mining aspect, where it tried to have it, and you went into full ASICs and then masternodes, and essentially it became a dormant chain. And Dash had a ton of marketing. Like anybody that knows Dash in 2016, 2017, it was a monster amount of marketing being thrown in there, and it still just lost its inertia. So, if you're a miner out there and you're trying to figure it out, the best thing you can do is not put more cost on yourself right now. Just power down. Look, if it's not warranted for the cost, the spec miner and the small home miner at the end of the day ends up having the least amount of risk compared to larger operations. Larger operations right now are having to figure out what's next, and why they can pivot. If some new thing pops up, they can kill it really quick with a lot of hash rate and take out any of the profitability. And you do have that, and you will have that, because there is a lot of people with machines that are deployed and they're just waiting for the next thing and checking forums, and then maybe spec mining with part of it. You still got to realize that the larger operations just can't do that, because there's not enough liquidity out there. And there's still going to be, the constant is you're going to have a power bill. That's always a constant with mining, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, price up or down, floor falls out of it, you're still stuck with a power bill. So you have to really manage that expectation on what's reality. And just because the price pumps really high, you got to understand liquidity and what's on the various exchanges of what's liquid. Things like Ravencoin, Ethereum Classic's not so bad. Ergo and Flux is very quickly their emission rate could kill the liquidity out there if you had a large firm that's just buying or that's mining it all and just dumping, right? The daily volume doesn't warrant the entire emission schedule to being dumped, right? It will quickly kill it. Ethereum and Bitcoin had enough volume and demand on them that their daily emission doesn't really dent the Ethereum price, and it really didn't dent the Bitcoin price. However, some of these other coins, until they have that counterparty size, it's going to be a bit for that. So I know it's not a lot of what people want to hear, and there's a different. We've had quite a bit of analysis out there on what could happen, and a lot of the numbers didn't look good. But again, nobody also could tell if there wasn't going to be a price change that started to kind of front run that news, which it looked like it was going pretty well. But of course, all I think this chart right here shows you. I think everything over the last 7 days is pretty much down right now. But I think that our key activity is going to be seeing what comes next on these different coins and what they're providing, the industry. And this is one of the things we're going to focus on pretty heavily, not just spec mining with some of our rigs to get some of the emission, but to deploy it. We're going to be doing a video here as a follow-up on Ergo and what's possible with Ergo from like a use and utility standpoint with some of the emission we've earned so far on pointing our rigs to Ergo. Same thing with Flux. Also the same thing with Ravencoin. We're doing a Ravencoin cruise in November, and one of the things I want to cover on that cruise is the things that are going on right now with their concept of the metaverse and the VR piece on their NFT side for builders and developers that are out there. So very focused. You saw the thumbnail here. That thumbnail was very tactical on my deployment of it, being this is the time for coding and development. And the amount of attention that this space has right now from GPU miners, from people that are eager to find a home to be able to participate right now, will beget a opportunity of taking that emission and redeploying it. And I think that's one of the key factors here of people being able to bootstrap some of these networks with the liquidity that it's needed to get some activity on it. And then that activity starts to drum up what is the realm of possible what this chain can provide. We're going to test Flux pretty heavily on its app deployment side. I want to see what it's really made of. Can it handle not just game servers, but can it handle, some sort of like co-location load to where you can have, some runtime running on Flux and then it's actually functional. That kind of thing could spur a whole level of engagement from, medium to small businesses that right now can't really afford, a cluster or something set in AWS, but it could afford a $20, $30 node running on Flux that can still serve their purpose. That's some true engagement. When we start talking about land registries and some of the other things that were being done initially on Bitcoin back in 2014, those things could run on Ravencoin. Same UTXO setup, same framework as Bitcoin, and those things could be ported over. A lot of the functionality of the smart contracts that are in Ethereum can run on ETC, right? Would they deploy on ETC, right? Who's going to have the next stablecoin that has enough liquidity to have a liquidity pool to run? I know a few of the different coins are trying to see what it would take to start a liquidity. The stablecoin's a little rough because we saw what happened with Terra and USTT or UST. We're seeing what's going on with the government with the CBD or the central bank digital currency side. So stable coins are going to be very interesting, but those start to create those liquidity pools that then give enough volume for people to participate on. I've been going for about 39 minutes on this. I want to hear from the crowd. What are you guys looking at? do you have questions? I know it's a concerning time right now on what's next. What's next for us is actively covering and seeing what's in the realm for these other coins that we can mine. So it's not just around profitability and output of that. It's usability. Usability right now is the focus, because usability is what drives the demand that then drives price on a coin, which happens to make the yield that you're working on worth more as a security provider for this ecosystem. Wouldn't it be ideal to run ETH validator nodes on Flux? That's a good question. I don't know of anybody that has tried to run an ETH validator node on Flux. I would first try to run an ETH validate, just an ETH node. There's validators, which you put the 32 ETH in and you start earning emissions. And then there's nodes. I would just crawl, walk, run that. I would go with something that's less risk averse, and then see if it can handle a capability from the ingress and egress side on serving up an ETH on a node on that first. Let's see here. People are rolling here. POW coins, Mio, Spec, Nexo, Raven, Xano, BitsBeTrippin. I haven't looked into Nexo, Xano yet. Joshua with $5 super chat. For us newer miners, 1 to 2 year mining, we're finally earning our stripes. Stay hard. Well, you know, there's been in my opinion, 2 times that I've had a quote unquote shut down. Well, technically 3 if you count this one. Between August of 2014 to September of 2015 was the first one. That was 13 months where I just didn't run any GPU mining. I had a Jalapeno, which was a Bitcoin miner, and I had an Avalon A1, and then we had one more. It was an LTC miner at the time, which I think it was the Zeus, and it didn't run very well. It always crashed. It was 253 mega hash unit that kind of crashed. But yeah, we had that, and then in March of 2020, that month we shut down, which was like the beginning of COVID. ETH went all the way down to $86. That bill, if we would have got a full pay for the bill, the farm was about $23,000 a month in total cost, and we would have earned around $11,000. So we would have been writing essentially a $13,000 check to sell all of the ETH that we made plus 13 grand. So we shut down then too. So, and then right now, so our farm right now is powered off on the GPU side. I have some machines running here in the back. So, not all my GPU mining rigs are off. I do have a few on Ergo and one on Flux right now, mining. And then I have 2 that are setting on Raven. But those are our most efficient machines. And then I have one iPolo device that's like at 100 mega hash, like the iPolo Mini. And I did have a Dogecoin miner, the Vosscoin Dogecoin miner, and it died. So it lasted about 8 months, and then it died. So let's see here. Some more questions, my dudes. What's your opinion on Ergo besides low energy consumption? What's the pros and cons? We're learning it. So I'd say just pay attention over the next few videos as we start to deep dive, and I talk pros and cons on it. I think right now the difficulty adjustment on it is a concern, because people can really game the difficulty adjustment on Ergo. And I think we're seeing that, and we'll dive a little deeper on that one as I talk to GetBlock on their final video. Sell GPUs and buy ASICs, or keep GPUs and wait? I think it really comes down to what kind of GPUs you have. I mean, right now peak sells for GPUs are going to be like terrible. It's like the worst time to sell GPUs. So I would not sell GPUs personally unless you need that capital. Part of the hedge with GPU mining has always been the fact that it's a hedge, right? You purchased an asset that you can resell if you need to recoup some cash. And yes, that asset in a bad time of a liquidity drop would drop, but you would have an opportunity to possibly be able to recoup your cash. So if you need the money that was part of your hedge and you're running that hedge play, to where you can sell that and recapitalize yourself. And sometimes, you know, if you bought, you know, $1,000 GPU and it's worth $500, and you get that $500, and now the same GPU 2 months from now, because we stay flat for a while, becomes worth 300, then you're able to make 200 and buy the same GPU. So you might have an opportunity to play that. And it works the same way with trading a lot, but it is a risk. When looking for a spec mining new project, you have an evaluation for. So back in the day, I would go to Bitcoin Talk forum, look at the announcement posts, the ANNs. I haven't done that in a while because I think that kind of was, I think a lot of them have moved away from that. But it was really, are they bringing some kind of innovation? What did they fork from? Did they try to roll their own crypto? Those kind of things. Like, is this something completely novel and new? I would usually read through their white paper in full and see, are they bringing something new here? Are they referencing somebody? Did they just fork somebody else's coin and then try to add some features? And if they did, that's fine. But what are they trying to? Why did they do that and not stick with the main project? So a lot of it is just the intention. Is it an intention to try to increase rewards in some way, and it's purely around the gamification of the token and trying to make you more revenue for mining it? Then that turns me off. If it's more of a, hey, the emission is kind of like the add-on. It's not the point. So that's a key part of it. Emission is just the ability to increase the ability for people to participate, and it's kind of a necessary thing to get engagement. But it can't be the whole point of the coin. There has to be features and a reason for people to see that and use it. And that's why you have the current dynamic with Ethereum that we see in general, is that it has most of the development. It had a lot of the innovation. Effectively, Ethereum came onto the scene and said, hey, we're building a platform, not just a token that you hold. We're building a platform you can use. And for those uses, you'll have a range of reasons. It would have been a lot more pure if they didn't do a pre-mine. And I would have a little more strength on supporting Ethereum a little more, but Ethereum bootstrapped itself, and it did it at the and then I think that set its the unfortunate set of circumstances is that bootstrapping itself at the Ethereum Foundation and them doing the pre-mine and all the pre-holders was just like any other kind of raise, to where you have some early seed people getting in, and then you've promised them that you're going to drive value to that coin through some kind of mechanism or scarcity. So we saw emission rates being reduced kind of arbitrarily to try to drive price up. And then we saw a forced kind of push to get a proof of stake done under the guise of reducing energy, but in reality is to create quote unquote ultrasound money for the people that were early in it. And I think that kind of overshadows, unfortunately, some of the Ethereum intention. And I think they're going to feel that effect because of that. I think who wins in this space is who drives the most feature set that demands adoption through just the fact that they can actually do something and be consistent. And it has not all these gaping holes in it. And you'll get more and more participation that then will drive value to the coin. And then the folks that are mining it are just earning, a better output of a reward because they've stuck with it and they were just supporting it, maybe even investing into that ecosystem, and then they get paid back out of it. It kind of was starting to look that way for Ethereum for a while, and then they just started cutting emission and started talking how to try to pump the price. And I think you kind of lose the inertia, I think, in the community for that, unless you're a bag holder on it, which we have Ethereum. Like, I want it to not fail, but it's just unfortunate the way how it kind of played out. And we're gonna see. We're gonna see if the game theory works for Ethereum on that. But I think right now my attention will not be on Ethereum and will not be on proof of stake. It's going to be on the builders and developers on the proof of stake side, because I still believe it's the best security model. I still believe also it's the quickest engaging way that you can get somebody into the space, because they can take very basic knowledge of just operation of a computer and participate. And then that's kind of the gateway that gets them in. And then people start to understand on how to use and build on top of the ecosystem. What else you guys got? We'll answer a few more questions. Any possibility ETH just heading to failure? Well, I don't think it'll fail. I think just what happens is would you say Zcash has failed? Would you say Decred has failed? Vertcoin, Feathercoin, their chains are working. They're still there. They just don't have participation on them. They don't have participation on them because they alienated their communities. And their communities that are the lifeblood of that initial bootstrapping and investment of time to not just communicate the brand and what's available. That's effectively what happened when Zook went full in to say, well, we're pro ASICs. Then you end up having just a few ASIC providers that could build them. They overpriced them. And then you lost the ability for people to participate in it, and you lost this entire ecosystem around Zcash. And nobody talks about Zcash anymore. And I think that's what the problem is going to be with their Ethereum. Is Ethereum has a little different aspect because it has a huge amount of development personnel in it, but it's still not. If you could have both sides of it, having the entire ecosystem of miners out there, thousands of potential miners out there tens of thousands of people that could participate. Organically, the organic participation is one of the most profound things I think that you can provide an ecosystem to bootstrap from. You have a set of features. You have an ability for anybody on this planet, no matter where you're at in the world, to get lost and find a video on YouTube, download a couple pieces of software, download a wallet, start to participate in the security model. Go to sleep, wake up the next day, and get a yield, even as minuscule as it would be if right now with the amount of security participation, let's say on Ravencoin, where a single 3090 might be able to earn 80 coins in a day. Right now, it's going to earn about 8 to 10 coins a day, but they're still going to wake up, log in, see that they earned 8 coins. And they're going to be like, I got 8 coins. What can I do with this? How can I deploy this? Do I sell it? Well, it's not a lot of money. What else can I do with it? Oh, cool. There's some NFTs and they're cheap right now. Well, I'll buy an NFT to be in my wallet. I'll show it to my friends. The friends look at it and go, what the heck's that? Oh man, I plugged my machine in, had it run overnight when I was sleeping, earned a little bit of coin, deployed it here. Look at me. I'm like a genius in crypto now, right? And then that gets 5 more people to talk about it. That was no marketing. Some dude just found that video on YouTube, right? It was pure effort on them being the participant. If you're ever building a product, this is like the most perfect scenario you could ever ask for. You essentially laid out a framework that allowed people to discover it, participate in it, and never ask for permission. And they also reap the reward of that participation. And maybe the yield goes up. Maybe they look at the price chart and they go, man, that went to 27 cents one time. Well, I'll do this for a little bit longer. Man, that yield sucks. I'm paying this much for power. This probably doesn't make sense. Maybe I'll just go buy it. Now you got a counterparty buying it. Maybe they like that NFT experience. Maybe they learn how to download the VR part of it and start to go into like Braveland and buy things from a virtual gallery, right? Maybe they discover Flux, do the same exact thing I just said. Again, all of that organic engagement is the entire point of why I'm still up here talking to you guys on this, right? Is the fact that you have this very non-intrusive person makes a decision based on what they've seen and witnessed, it's based on what they can independently verify, right? It's not somebody telling them what they're going to do. There's calculators and stuff out there they can figure it out, but somebody can legitimately download this and participate in this ecosystem. And that is the way most people initially get in it. Like maybe they have a friend that's done it. Maybe they've just found a video on it and they're looking for something. And then they end up finding a community. And most of the communities in crypto, especially the GPU mining community, is one of the best communities out there. People help each other. A ton of us make videos on it. This is the whole reason why I made the channel back in 2013 is I was on the forums, like talking to people, helping people with problems. And I was like, there's no YouTube videos that do this. Like why? I'll just make a YouTube video. And then that YouTube video made more people on figuring out how we do it. And then those folks would provide me candid feedback like, hey, man, that's a terrible idea. You probably shouldn't do that. And I would take that and be like, hey, this person, so-and-so user showed me how to do this. Let me give them a shout out because now we're going to show you guys, on a video on how it's done. And I think that right there is what we're talking about. That's what's cool about this community. And that's what won't die, right? So when people are like, hey, GPU mining is going to die, it's not going to die. What it's going to do is it's going to rescind some back because the security emission can't pay for the amount of yield that's out there that's being given out because it's just, there's too much participation right now that is for people with larger farms are just not going to be able to pay their power costs, and then they're going to have to turn off. But your few folks that have a single GPU and stuff, it's going to rescind back to that, to where the home miner that can turn off and have a sunk cost in their cards or find some real good deal right now on GPUs because NVIDIA is just fire selling everything. It allows people to get into this, and I think that this community, the 600 plus of you guys following are looking right now onto this video. This is what you're here for. Is you're trying to figure out, well, okay, what's next? And what I'm saying is step it down. If you have 10 rigs, step it down to 1 rig. Go mine some flux or go pick up some flux. Go try to deploy an application. If you're a developer, go check out their how to deploy page. We're going to provide some content related to that because we're genuinely going to try it. Actually going to try to deploy a Minecraft server on there. I know Son of a Tech's done this. I don't know if he actually deployed it all the way, but I'd love to try a Minecraft server, try some gaming. Why gaming? Why does it matter? Because I think it merges the two worlds. It merges a GPU miner with a gamer. And says, holy crap, there's a cryptocurrency blockchain out there that I can, instead of going to G Portal or one of these other gaming instances that I can go download, I could actually deploy my own instance on a crypto chain that my GPU, when I'm sleeping, can earn me the income to keep my server up. Like mind-blowing, right? So I think that I want to test that theory. Can we deploy a game server on Flux? Does it function? Is the latency okay? Is the timing okay? Is there stability issues? Does it crash? How stable is it? Those are questions I want to know because Flux gives that capability. Same thing on the metaverse side on Ravencoin. Get some NFTs in Ravencoin. How does the asset piece work? How many wallets are out there that support it? On Ergo, same kind of thing. How does its integration with Cardano going to work? Right? How do any of the features that on the pool on GitBlock, being able to see all the way down to the transaction, the shares submitted, how much more accurate is that compared to mining pools that don't provide any kind of detail, right? Like expose the ecosystem and its feature set, I think is the next step. Thanks, guys, for those super chats, Alpha Miner. And then look at some of these other ones. I see some people talking, some of these other different currencies. Take a look at them. Now that we can not have to focus on Ethereum, like looking at some of these. Let's see if you guys got a few more. One of the Jason says the ETH validator community is very helpful. Anybody can run a validator with an investment of 32 ETH. No need for GPU and ASIC miners required anymore. That's correct, but there's some question on the long-term viability of that. Right now, I think the ETH validator community will grow exponentially when there's unlocks. When you have the ability to disengage from the community and engage, just like you can with mining, I think it'll be one step further for Ethereum once they have that. When you have, but right now, there's no way I could confidently recommend people to stake ETH right now when there's still a lot of question of when they're going to actually provide the ability for people to get out of it and unlock it. It's just there's too much question with that, and I argue that should have been as part of this ETH merge. Like the incentives are misaligned for them ever to unlock it because of the risk of 2.6 million ETH now being able to be unstaked. Not that all 2.6 million would be, but if we see, 300,000 ETH just come onto the market, what's that? How does that affect the system? And how do you govern the on-ramp and off-ramp of unstaking and staking? Is there spin down time? Is there 24 hours? What's that? Those are the rules I want to see. When I see that specification, then I can talk ETH staking stuff. Until then, it's off my radar. So a couple housekeeping things before we wrap this one up, guys, because we're trying to keep this one. So there is a 1-year Crypto World event that we have for our local business here, so that I'm part of. So that's out of Crypto World out in St. Charles, Missouri. We're having a 1-year party there. It's going to be like an all-day thing. I'm going to be there talking from 2 to 4 on a couple different things. I am going to cover during that live stream for Crypto World, that is this Thursday. I'm going to be covering essentially all the stuff that came out with the White House. We're going to kind of pose like, what's it all mean? What, based on what I'm reading there, how do I look at where things are going to go, or where things could go, based on that language that was out there. So we'll cover that on Thursday. So if you're not subscribed, you should be subscribed for that with a bell notification on. We'll be talking on that. Again, that's 2 to 4. I'm Central Standard Time. So we'll be out there in St. Charles, Missouri for that, and talking, and we'll have a different live stream for that piece. The other topics that we're going to talk about is, again, a little more on the ETH post-merge from a hardware standpoint. And we'll talk some other things that you could do with that hardware in relation to that. And then maybe we'll have a little prediction on how long I think that'll last. Because I'll be through at least the deployment for the Flux video, and we'll probably get through the next Ergo video, and it gives me a lot more applicable knowledge that then gives me a better confidence on the sustainability of some of those features that are part of both Ergo and Flux. And then that gives me a better outlook of how quick I think the inertia could come from, the community. Now that the attention can be on those coins, and you have the mining attention on there. All right, my dudes. Well, hopefully this gave you guys some kind of insight. Again, we'll peel it back a little further on those those 3 different coins. And we'll see how things look. But if you're sitting there thinking that the prices are going to pump and you're still mining something, look at your pricing, look at your pricing on your power, see, if this makes sense for you to continue for a bit. And then we'll peel more of this back this week. BBT, what are you mining? Like I said, I have a few machines on Ergo, Flux, and I do have a couple on Ravencoin. I'm taking the yields from those, even the reduced amount of yields, and I'm going to see what we can do with those in the next few videos. So it's not a lot of machines. The majority of the farm is turned off besides the Bitcoin mining. All right, my dudes. Just keep your head up, my dudes. We've been through this a few times. This is a great community. And the good thing is we do have some pretty solid coins out there that are providing some solid features. This isn't like my 2014 experience where essentially everything went away, and it was terrible because there really was nothing to mine in August of 2014, where we have a lot of things that we can mine. So, all right, my dudes, we'll catch you later this week.